Does Beyond All Reason have the unit diversity and quality of life to make it as a long-term real-time strategy game? That's what this video is going to be about. So for anyone who's played real-time strategy games, for anybody that has, probably is over 30 years old and has put a lot of time in these sorts of games, you know that there's two things realistically that you want out of any sort of real-time strategy game. You want the ability to have a large, diverse roster of units so that you can counter certain strategies, you can play the game in certain ways, and not every game ends up feeling the same with spamming the same units. And in addition to that, you want to make sure that the unit pathing is very good with enough quality of life to the entire game as a whole that the game is not extremely frustrating to play and that you never really get any situations where you're just sitting there pulling your hair out. Now, I think that this game both has a very good unit roster and has enough quality of life features that I think it will definitely excel. And going into the future, I think that this is a game that everybody should remember, because I think that it's got a lot of ways to go. So there are two things you should know before I go into this video. One, this is kind of a Supreme Commandery game. And two, I'm not going to be talking that much about what Beyond All Reason is as a whole. I'm mostly just interested in talking about it's very good unit roster and it's very good quality of life. That in my opinion, I don't think this is going to be like, oh my god, the next big esports. No, of course not. I don't care about esports or anything like that. I just want a game that you can go in and you can play and have fun. Just not even with friends, you can just go and you can play with people online and have a nice fun game that doesn't feel very tedious and frustrating to play, right? And I think that's where this one excels. So let's talk about the unit roster first. The unit roster in many real-time strategy games will have issues. If one unit is extremely dominant at most roles, then it will shove everybody out, and most games are going to end up playing the same, with the best unit from your faction fighting the best unit from the other faction, and maybe you have some supporting units and things like that, but realistically, you need to make sure that each unit is diverse and has a job that it excels at, and that's really what this game does well. Now, there are, of course, at each tier for each different things, so let me explain that. There are bots, vehicles, and aircraft. Tier 1 for each, tier 2 for each. At tier 3, we just have this experimental gantry, which gives us the ability to access tier 3 units. There are tier 3 aircraft, tier 3 boats, and I think tier 3 aircraft in addition to this, but you would need a different building to get that one. And so at tier 1 bots, tier 2 bots, you're going to have lots of access to different units. Tier 1 vehicles, tier 2 vehicles, you're going to have access to different units. Of course, these construction buildings are quite expensive to build, so you're not going to be getting tier 2 bots and tier 2 vehicles at the same time. You'll generally want to focus on one of them. You could get both, but because the factory itself is pretty expensive, you're going to be focusing on one. So then, is there enough within bots and vehicles to have a fun and diverse game? I would say yes. So just to look at vehicles here as an example, we do, of course, have our medium tanks here. These are reasonably fast units that are pretty tanky. Their DPS is not the highest, but they're just pretty tanky, pretty fast. So you would assume that everyone's just going to spam medium tanks because they're just going to be the best, but that's just simply not true. There's lots of things that the artillery bots can do. Now, what the developers have done is we do have in tier 1 vehicles here, we have the missile truck, which shoots direct fire missiles, which are quite good, and overall probably the best tier 1 vehicle in the game, just because of how difficult they are to deal with, a very, very long range dumbfire missile unit. But that doesn't mean that artillery has no purpose. See, artillery has a very unique mechanic where you can lob these shots very, very, very high. So artillery, despite not being that good against enemies that have a direct line of sight to you, that can just walk up to you, they are very, very good at firing over terrain and taking down static emplacements and things like that. So artillery definitely still has a place in the game. They're very niche, but they're very good. And that's what you really want out of these real-time strategy games. You want something that's very niche, but very powerful within its niche. Real quick, before I go any further, I do want to talk here real quick about this range. When you click on a unit, you can see its range, and that is very, 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 very useful. When you try to build a defensive emplacement, you can see its range, which is very, very, very useful. That's something in a lot of real-time strategy games that they don't do, which means that the player base just kind of has to like memorize the range of each unit, which can be very frustrating, especially when we have so many different units. We've got 2 factions with a 3rd coming along within a few months now. So memorizing all the different ranges of all the different units would be quite tedious, quite annoying, quite frustrating, and I don't think anybody would really enjoy that. You can say it takes away from my esports. But once again, I don't care, dude. No one cares about your esports. But yeah, so you can see if we're doing attack move commands or anything like that, we can see the range on ourselves, and that's quite good. So Within tier 1, we have 10 different units. 2 of them are just construction units. One of them is a mine layer. Now we can see over here, we can lay down mines. There are commands here. What you can do, you can shift click and you can, put down a amount of mines, which is, pretty good. But then if you shift click and then hold alt, we can put down a corner mines, and we can hold shift and alt and then Z and X control how spaced out they are. I like to space them out a little bit because otherwise they just blow each other up, right? And then of course you can just issue a command. So the Minesweeper has a very good command list. He can build fortifications, he can build mines, he can build cameras. So the Minesweeper is cool. He's also got a self jammer on himself, so he can never be picked up on radar, which is quite useful because this means you can be setting up fortifications, and unless an enemy has actual visual confirmation on you, you are totally invisible to them. So he might be a little bit more niche, but he's got a role over there. Now other units, of course, have their very unique roles as well. Even once I go into tier 2, we can see the heavy assault tank, which is generally going to be your spammable unit. But we can see a long-range direct fire gun. We can see a rocket launcher. Now what this guy does is he shoots a rocket all the way up, and then it comes, I don't know why I'm saying that. I can just show you guys. So he's pretty cool too, because he's like a higher ranged artillery. And that rocket does a lot of damage. So yeah, so I mean, he's not a total replacement for artillery. Artillery will do more DPS, I mean, if you spam enough of them. But obviously, once we're at tier 2, artillery might not cut it, and we might need to move on to the ambassador just to get those rockets right there. So we can see, even if units are being replaced by higher tier units, that they still have a little bit of diversity from them. And that's not to say all units will always be replaced by higher tier units. There is still a good argument to be spamming these low tier units that are like the good low tier units to spam. Many games are won and lost on these low tier units. But we can see we have a artillery that does a little bit of an arc. So if you just want good DPS, this mobile artillery replaces this one. But then of course we've got the ambassador, who's good for arcing directly over each other. We got stealth tanks who can stay invisible, so you have to be right next to them in order to find them, which they can help you pinpoint enemies. And then maybe while you can find enemies that are under jammed radar, you can then use your more mobile artillery to do good DPS and actually try to take them out. There's just a lot of unit diversity, and the bots pretty much the same thing. Over here on the bot, we can see a sharpshooter. The sharpshooter is a direct fire unit with a 10-second cooldown, so he's really good at getting in and out. And of course, he can stealth as well, even though it drains a lot of energy. So lots of them might be difficult to do. But yeah, so he's pretty good at doing absolute loads of burst damage and taking down at least tier 2 units, but even high tier units are pretty good. We got mobile jammers. We've got a bot mobile jammer, and we've got a vehicle mobile jammer. The bot mobile jammer, he's a little bit quicker for sure. He's got 48 speed versus 33 speed, but he's got a lot less HP, and this guy's a little bit more line of sight of his own. So there are some differences between the two, not the most. I mean, they're both just jammers, right? But then bots will of course have some unique things. They got a Lazarus bot, which can actually revive units. You can just straight bring them back to life, and that's at tier 1, so that unit never gets replaced. Tier 2 bots will have some decently cool things like the butler, but the butler can't actually revive people. He can repair people, and he's pretty good at repairing. And he's got the ability to construct, what can he do? Metal extractors, turbines. Is that it? Yeah, well, he's not the greatest at building. He's just really good at running around the map. Yeah, speed 75, so he's really good at running around the map. He's not very tanky at all, 335. So the tier 2 tank, what do I got? Vehicle constructor, did I build one? I thought I did. Where are you? Oh, there you are. So here we can see the console. Now that's a tier 2 vehicle constructor. Not every, so for example, the other faction, Cortex, they don't have a tier 2 vehicle constructor, so that makes Armada a bit more diverse in that regards, which is good. But this dude, he's much tankier, coming at 1,000 HP compared to 335. So, it's definitely a bit better, right? But he's also faster too. And he's got more build power. And he's got way more line of sight. Okay, so the butler is just obliterated by the console. The console's just better in every regard. And then the console, he can build all these defenses. He can build advanced radar. He can build jammers. He can build giant fortification walls. So yeah, no, the console definitely kicks the crap out of the butler. What does a butler even do well? Nothing. He's terrible. Seriously, I don't understand it. Butler, you suck. Anyway, that's kind of the diversity. Not every unit needs to be the best unit ever, but simply put, just the ability to have a butler while you're going bots and have a unit who can come up here and deploy these metal extractors, that's pretty good for you, right? And so I'm not going to go too into it that much, but it's very nice, the unit diversity. Now, all units can shoot while moving, which will go into the pathfinding. I'm going to talk about the pathfinding right now. Unit diversity is very good, but let's talk about pathfinding. Now, I do want to talk one thing here as we talk about unit diversity. Don't think these bigger units are just better because they're bigger. There will be some tier 3 units that are quite fast and able to turn around very quickly, you know, get into range and all that. This guy's not exactly the tankiest, so he's got about the same HP as a bull, despite being... Oh, he's actually less metal. Oh, because he's 21,000 energy. So he's about the same metal as a bull, but he's way more energy. Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, so this guy's, he's got crazy good DPS, but he is not tanky at all, but he is very, very, very fast. Oh, he's a fast fucker. So, some of these bigger units, if I build a Titan, it might take a second to build a Titan. Some of these bigger units, definitely, they can't turn their turrets as easily, so they're prone to getting flanked. They're not always the best. They can, of course, be overwhelmed by lower tier units as well. So I don't just think big equals better. It's pretty common for these plasma bots to get spammed as well, or grunts or other units. Now, this is what I want to talk about the pathfinding here real quick. In other games, moving this many units around might be quite difficult, almost impossible. I'm gonna do something right now that a lot of you guys don't really understand. In RTS games, turning a corner is a death sentence. Turning a corner is one of the most difficult things you can tell units in games like this to do, because they just can't turn corners. And yet you can see here real easily, these units... Is there a path down there that I don't understand? Are they getting stuck? What are you guys doing? You're gonna make me look like fools. Oh no, there is a path down there. Neat. So you can see, they managed to turn the corner. Even a pack of, how many of these guys they got? 176 of them managed to get into 2 different areas, path down 2 different ways. They're going past each other and they're setting up the formation I built. And even if I changed their orders right at the same time, we can see that they can get into these different formations really early. I should say really easily. They can do that. Now, how does it work on vehicles? Now, vehicles, of course, if we're just clicking forward, they're going to move forwards. But that's obviously not the best way to use vehicles because they've got much higher turn speed. You can see vehicles don't really turn as easy as bots do. That's one of the advantages of bots over vehicles. But so long as you are setting them up like this, we can tell them to turn, and they'll very easily turn. They can try to stay in formation. They try to stay in formation as much as they can, so long as you're drawing the same command, so to speak, that you gave them last time. Now, of course, the commands, we can do pretty much anything, and this makes it, you know, pretty useful for us. We could draw a circle here, and then if we draw another circle up here, we can see, yeah, it'll be like that. Now, as for Titans, I can show you against the Titan. He's, of course, going to be a bit slower. He's, what's his speed? 46. So this guy, this is the guy where these, let's say these lasers, right? These guys are going to be the things that take out these things. Now, of course, these laser cannons are not going to be the best at moving around or anything like that, but they're very good at... Can you just shoot something? Okay, he doesn't want to shoot. Oh, there we go. So this guy's pretty good at taking out single targets. Maybe not the greatest at these guys. So you could build a lot of units to take out tier 3 units, and then you might be overwhelmed by these units. Now, then how is it to manage formations, right? So you saw this Titan entered into, I shouldn't say formations, but let's say unit groups. I assigned all my frontliners to unit group 1. You don't have to do that. You could obviously be a bit more diverse, but let's see, this mace is on unit group 2. Now, then how is this game as ease of use for just, you know, keeping my units on the front line and actually playing the game? Do I have to be sitting back here managing this? No, of course not. If you build one factory and you build a bunch of construction turrets behind it, that one factory will do all your construction for you. You only really need more than one factory. If we're talking about like late game, having like hyper mega late game, an hour into the game, you might need like a couple tier 1 factories that are boosted. But even there, if we're looking at a tier 1 factory, let me build 100 maces right now. That's pawns, my bad. Let's build 100 maces right now. And you can see with a couple construction turrets behind it, they're just pumped out instantly. They're, we're having no problems here, and that's really good to go. Now, of course, you see they're automatically entering unit group 2. That's because one of the things this game does is allow you to assign any unit of a type into a unit group. So if I'm at the front line and I just want my pawns, well, I guess in this case, my maces, I want them all at the front line as much as I can get them, and I don't want to keep looking back at my base and dragging them up as I continue to make more and more. I can just say any mace builds, you will go into unit group 2, which is quite useful. And then I can say any medium tank that builds, you will go into unit group 1. And then as we continue to get more and more tanks being deployed and onto the front line, they will continue to go in here. So as I issue orders and I'm trying to micro this and I'm like, okay, well, we need to get here. Oh, no, there's an enemy over here. Let's turn and get over here. Oh, no, it's turn and get back into range. Okay, now it's turn to the left. So you can see this pathfinding is really well done, even for units that need to turn and all that. This is, honestly, like for RTS players, there's a surprise that it actually worked this well. Now, I have to suspect the reason that this does work so well is because the units themselves don't have complicated hitboxes. They don't seem to have complicated visuals or anything like that. Although the explosions and things like that might be, you know, quite visual. They kept the unit quality down to a reasonable level. So even at extraordinarily high numbers of units, we can zoom in and out really easy. That's perfectly fine right here. There's no lag. You can see my FPS is 144, so I'm literally at the cap. I don't know how many units I would have to build for my FPS to start tanking, but all I know is it's going to be a lot more than this. So this is why I think Beyond All Reason is going to be, in my opinion, do pretty well. The last thing I do want to talk about real quick here is the visual on the map itself. As I did mention, we do have the unit groups allowing me to move my units without having to micro very much on the back line. I can have my units, and you can see right here, I mean, like, look at this stuff, right? Like, these dudes might be, like, kind of body blocky us a little, but even in narrow corridors, we're managing to get these units out here. I mean, I'm promising you, anyone that plays real-time strategy games, you're looking at this and you're going, oh, dang, that's actually really nice, and that's really well done. Yeah, it really is. But the second thing that I want to talk about, well, I should say the last thing I want to talk about is the visual confirmation on the map. If I've discovered an enemy turret, I can see its range on the map. I don't need to look back, and I don't need to continue to remember every single turret's range in every single way. So long as I have a visual confirmation on a turret, meaning not on radar, but I have something physically seeing the turret, I can see its range on the map. So long as I have a radar jammer here, I can see my radar jammer's range on the map. So long as I have radar, I do have a radar right here, I can see my radar's range on the map. Now, that's not to say something could be blocked. There's visual blocking of radar here, so something could be down here. There could be stealth units, maybe radar jammed units moving past, so it's not a perfect, you know, I know everything here, but I can see my radar range, which helps me a lot. Additionally, I think I showed you guys this earlier, we can see the range on turrets, which is quite nice, because especially as we start building different types of turrets, so like here's a beam turret, it's gonna have a different kind of range. Can I see an advanced constructor? Do I have any advanced constructors? Nah, screw it, let's just build one real quick. So as we can see advanced constructors here real quick, we're gonna have lots of different turret ranges. So it's pretty good, in my opinion, to be able to see the ranges of all these different turrets right off the top of my head without having to, you know, memorize all this stuff, because, yeah, this would be quite frustrating. Even on the long-range artillery, it covers the entire map, I assure you. It's just hitting everything. If it didn't hit everything, but yeah, we can even see on air, we can see our air coverage, our anti-air coverage. So all this stuff it's super easy to learn, super easy to pick up. It's really visual, even for spectators. Spectators can get the confirmation what's going down. It's blocked, it's blocked. This is my radar range. Here's my visual range right here. I mean, visual range is in pretty much every game. We see the range of our units right there. It's pretty nice. We're running into a turret. We can see when we're running into turret. Pathfinding is perfect. It's in my opinion, I think Beyond All Reason, once it goes on Steam, is going to be doing really, really well. Mark my words on that. I think this game will be about a 10 to 20,000 concurrent, maybe more like 10,000 concurrent. It really depends on what the devs can do. But I would say, I think this game will be about 10,000 concurrents once it's brought onto Steam, because I think the developers have done a really good job of making sure that players can pick it up and play it. Now, as always, do remember that real-time strategy game players are not nearly as good as you think they are. There's this weird mentality a lot of people have where real-time strategy games are the hardest games ever made and only Jesus himself could play them. That's not true. That's never been true. People play these games all the time and are quite bad at them. People play these games all the time and are quite good at them, but I would say on average, more people play these games and are quite bad at them. So it's very good for new players to have all these visual confirmations of here's what's going on the map, and here's what I can understand, and here's my units moving into range. Look at that range, isn't that easy? Look at me moving those units, isn't that easy? Look at me drawing a circle. And yeah, so that's all I have to say. Beyond all reason, remember it, I think this game will do good. So thank you all for watching, thank you all for being here, thank you everybody, and as always, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day.